welcome to the very first episode of the Fyrestone Podcast. This is a podcast all about filmmaking, particularly independent filmmaking here in the United Kingdom, but I'm sure we'll talk about films from other shores. Sometimes we'll talk about individual films, and sometimes we'll talk about the filmmaking industry in general. This is the very first episode, and I am your host, I suppose, BJC. For the first episode, I wanted to kind of talk about the film industry on the whole, where it is, where we are, kind of a state of the union, if you will, which would make me the president, which is quite a lot of authority to give myself in the first episode of a podcast, but hey, we'll run with it. So, for those of you who don't know, I am BJC. I run BJC Video, which is my commercial video outfit, and then Fyrestone Studios, which is basically where I do my creative filmmaking. And as a result of the current COVID-19 situation, I've had projects on both sides either postponed or cancelled, which is necessary due to the requirements of social distancing to try and stop the spread of COVID-19. But I kind of wanted to talk about what effect this has had on filmmaking in general, specifically in the United Kingdom, and also kind of where we were before that. I'm only really going to cover the last 10 years because that's kind of where, since I've been in the headspace of filmmaking, and I could just be here all day talking about the history of cinema in the UK, which is probably another podcast done by someone a bit smarter than myself. So I suppose the best place to start is talking about where I come from. I graduated in film 10 years ago or thereabouts. And in that time since then, I've been trying to kind of keep making films. But I have always been in the situation where I've been absolutely broke due to several reasons. And it means that it's always been a massive uphill struggle to make anything. I mean, in that time, I've written 2 books. I've written God knows how many screenplays. I've done all sorts of bits and pieces. But filmmaking is difficult because it's the one of the few creative outlets where you need other people. You can't do it on your own. And you either have people around you who are able or willing to help with film projects, or you have to go out and find people. And I've also had the misfortune of living in places like Milton Keynes and Hull, where there really isn't much in the way of filmmaking. There's not much of an industry built in, so the people who are there tend to be hobbyists. There's obviously kind of standalone cases here and there of people getting involved, but so it's not easy. The filmmaking in the United Kingdom is not an easy endeavour, and I've got stuff to talk about on that in a bit anyway. It's interesting. We've England has a storied history with making films, and if I feel like that storied history, that built-in legacy, is now used to leverage much higher scale productions. From the likes of Disney and Netflix, and I was going to say Fox, but obviously I mean Disney. I was going to say Lucasfilm, but obviously I mean Disney. That nightmare aside, and there really isn't that much in the way of independent projects, which makes it very difficult if you're trying to fight your way into the industry right now. So, for example, 10-ish years ago, is it 2010? The UK Film Council was disbanded by the recently elected Conservative government. Now, for those of you who don't know, the UK Film Council was a public body that funded the film industry and supported its growth through various funds, such as the New Cinema Fund, which contributed to In the Loop, Wind That Shakes the Barley, Adulthood, This Is England, London to Brighton. And then there was the Premier Fund, which had a hand in getting Dorian Gray, How to Lose Friends and Alienate People, Saturnians, projects like that made. And the last project the UK Film Council made was The King's Speech, or kind of assisted in producing, was The King's Speech. Now, apparently it was closed with no consultation, a process that cost several times more than its $3 million a year budget. But this came after the UK Film Council said that the BFI should be abolished, the British Film Institute. Basically, there was a bit of a campaign to say there should be one outfit within the UK that handles film. And the UK Film Council was very public in saying the BFI should be shit-canned, and even run a financially dodgy marketing campaign to say as such, and then ended up getting shut down themselves. another BFI handles the roles the UK Film Council did. So there is a production support in the UK via the British Film Institute, and they take the lottery money that the UK Film Council used to use and kind of pass that on to production. But there are caveats. So similar to the Film Council, there are a few different types of funding opportunities that you can apply for with the BFI, but none of them are ideal. For example, the BFI production funding, the film has to have a minimum budget of £250,000, which is a lot of money. It's £250,000. There's also a development fund, but the budget for that has to come 100% not from the BFI. The BFI will contribute to certain things at the specific costs, like writers' fees and research costs and stuff like that. So even getting developmental assistance from the BFI, you're looking at raising tens of thousands of pounds just to make a feature film. I say just to make a feature film. Obviously, it's a big endeavour, but it shouldn't be that. You should be able to make a micro-budget feature in this country, I think, and still be working on a commercial level. In places like LA, it kind of works because production is a feasible industry. There are a lot of built-in, what's the best way of putting it? There's a lot of built-in mechanics. The industry is not just people producing the media, people consuming the media. There are companies that are set up to invest in production media. There are companies that work as middlemen and intermediaries that assist in the building of finance towards a production budget. In the UK, there's really very little of that. Not to mention, in terms of consumption, there's not much in the way of, not many independent cinemas in the UK outside of big metro hubs, especially. I mean, I come from Reading. I don't know if there is one in Reading. I would assume so. But I've spent the most time in the past 10 years in Milton Keynes, where there is no independent cinema, and Hull. And I don't believe there's an independent cinema here either. Which is not good, because it means that you're kind of limited to the big chains. And as we all know, it's a whole other kettle of fish trying to get a film through kind of large scale distribution like cinemas. So yeah, it's not an easy task getting a film made. I want to look at a BBC article from February this year called "Warning Over British Independent Film Scene's Spiral of Decline." And the bit I particularly want to talk about here is they, just to pull this figure out, the amount of money spent making films and high-end television in the UK rose 16% to a record $3.6 billion in 2019, the annual figures showed, thanks to Hollywood studios and US TV giants shooting more in Britain. I feel like this is a good time to point out that I have stood on the very ground where the Death Star was made. This is unrelated to what we're talking about. I don't get many chances to brag about it, but I've been on the George Lucas stage, so well done. This is my gift to you. But spending on British films with no studio backing dropped by 45% to 175 million, and the number of homegrown productions with budgets over £500,000 fell from 94 in 2018 to 49 last year. So, spending on British films with no studio backing dropped by 45%. And the number of homegrown productions with budgets over £500,000 fell from 94 to 49. And I know £500,000 is a lot more than the sort of budgets that we were talking about just before, but that's almost half. That's a big drop. It's a big, scary old drop. But I mean, we've seen, I can't remember the company's name, something like Black Thistle or something, the American studio. They're opening a new studio in the UK sometime in the next few years, supposedly. But we know there's big productions there. You've got your Pinewood, your Shepperton, and so on. Big production happens, and I would imagine it's the same thing in New Zealand. I don't have much experience with the industry in New Zealand, but certainly it would seem that the massive increase in projects happening over there following the success of Lord of the Rings and the kind of subsequent expansion of Weta has had an impact in that there are a lot more projects shooting there. And a lot of them are big scale, massive projects. And supposedly the independent industry out there is struggling as a result. And there was that whole business with the kind of workers' rights of actors, which was a whole thing I'm probably going to get into another time, because goodness gracious. There's not. I've got a few bits and pieces that I'm kind of bringing up, but this one I actually want to read you the whole thing. I don't just want to kind of pull out individual bits. I just want to go through the whole thing, because I think it's a well written, good article, but it's also a bit terrifying. So this is from Variety on the 19th of Feb. Again this year, why the UK's struggling indie film business is only getting tougher. Now I retweeted this closer to the time, so if you want to read the article itself, then you can just jump on at BJC Video on Twitter, and you can find it there. And I'll put the links to all these articles in the show notes as well. A startling 1-2 punch of new statistics from the British Film Institute and industry body UK Producers Roundtable have revealed the stark challenges facing the country's independent filmmakers. After a BFI study published late January revealed that spending on UK independent film production fell by 45% to 175, we talked about this. A recent UK Producers Roundtable report shows that many independent producers earn less than £6,000 per year for their film production work. That's $7,800. Most had given up their producing fee multiple times to get their films made. That's insane. Producers do a lot of work. I hate producing stuff. I prefer working with producers, but gosh, that's earning less than £6,000. That's not a stable. That's not a stable amount of money. The unforgiving climate for independent filmmakers was last investigated in 2018 by the BFI Commission, which put forward recommendations such as maximising the value of rights, as well as setting up more commercial development funding that involves private investment. However, the new figures underline that the independent film financing landscape is only getting tougher. Digital distribution, increased competition for audiences, and the collapse of the physical video and TV market for features have all contributed to the decline in international value for UK independent films, making it harder than ever to pre-sell projects and sell completed features around the world. And then it goes into some interviews with specific people from the industry. Like I said, it's well worth a read. I'm not going to read the whole thing actually, but you can definitely go and check it out on the BJC Twitter. I just want to come in at the end of the article here. The odds remain stacked against independent producers, argues Phil Hunt, managing director of sales house Bankside Films and investment firm Headgear Films. It's no longer you win or you lose, he says. It's now you lose, and you'll be very, very lucky to win. He maintains that headlines about multi-million-dollar acquisitions at this year's Sundance Film Festival mask a grim reality about the independent film market. Many great movies are simply not being bought at all. You can go to market and get no sales, none. So if you've got an independent movie that costs £1 million to £5 million pounds to make, how would you make that work? Yeah, it's not good. There are a few successful outfits in the UK, some of whom I know personally. It'd be great to have them on the podcast at some point to talk about kind of the way they make films and kind of how they got started in the industry. But you can see it even as how you consume media. We're seeing the streaming wars really stepping up at the moment. They're obviously taking advantage of the current situation, and they're throwing out as much content as they can to pull in audience members while people are stuck at home. But we've had the people who did it best early, like Netflix, and they are now being taken on by the people who have seen Netflix test the market. They've seen the proof of concept that companies like Netflix have managed to achieve in Hulu. And companies like Disney are now wading in, and they're doing their part, and they're able to throw a lot of money at it, similar to this whole virtual Formula One racing thing, which is we probably won't talk about because it's not related to filmmaking necessarily. But yeah, I mean, we've got Disney Plus. I think Disney also owns Hulu, don't they? I believe. And in talking about the films that people are able to put on their streaming service. Disney owns Marvel, Fox, and all sorts of bits and pieces. So it's there's a sense of corporate coagulation happening in terms of the media that's being offered to consumers at the moment, and it's not a good sign for independent filmmakers. Certainly, the best streaming outfit that I've seen and I'm aware of for indies is Amazon Prime, and the problem with Amazon Prime is that it is getting so difficult to find good things in Amazon Prime. We use the website and we use the PlayStation 4 app, and fuck me sideways, it is so difficult to find. So I like watching horror films. I like seeing, back when Netflix was putting good things on Netflix, I would tab onto the horror genre and I'd have a look and see what new horror films there are, and I'd pick a film based on kind of what appealed to me. You can't do that on Amazon. If you go onto Amazon and then try and specify down to horror, you get page after page after page after page of indies, big budget films, and mostly just real bottom of the barrel. There's YouTube videos on there for some fucking reason, because people just like partnership programs. It's just it's so difficult to find good stuff. And I know that I know filmmakers who have their work on Amazon Prime, and it's great they have that outlet, but it's very difficult to get your stuff found. It has to purely come again from your own marketing. It's something that has to come from yourself pushing these things forward. And if you're an independent filmmaker, then you're already doing a lot of jobs. Running social media accounts and doing on the marketing side is exhausting. It's certainly not my strong point. So making films in the UK is not an easy endeavour. Just having a drink, and I'm probably not going to edit it out either. So there you go. And then COVID-19 happened. Some global disruption. So obviously, I don't need to explain what COVID-19 is at this point. It's caused enough fuckery around the world at the moment. We have seen a number of films from the upcoming docket being either no cancellations. I don't think, just kind of indefinite delays. Quiet Place 2, Wonder Woman 1984, the new James Bond film, Fast and Furious 9, Mulan, New Mutants. What's going on with New Mutants, man? That's got to be worth a bit of a deep dive investigation, hasn't it? Black Widow. We're in the very beginning of April now. We're seeing films that were going to be the big summer blockbusters. Ghostbusters, the new Ivan Reitman Ghostbusters film, Morbius, Minions, fucking 12 or whatever it is. These are projects that are, they could be tentpole. If there is any semblance of movies going back to the way they were, then your big summer blockbusters, the tentpole Independence Day releases, that's kind of where you're going to be looking. But no, delayed, and they have to be. We've also seen production for movies being interrupted as well. Uncharted, Mission Impossible, Stranger Things, Jurassic World, Batman, Matrix, the million Avatar films, and that's crazy because it means that after COVID-19, after the social distancing requirements have relaxed, if they ever relax, there's going to be a shortfall of movies coming out of the theatre. And the interesting thing there is that, we're going to have 6 months, maybe, where we're going to see very few films coming out in the theatres, I think. And it would be interesting to see if we get some more older films thrown up there. For my birthday, what was it, a couple of years ago? Because it happens on my birthday is on Independence Day, as per the Terminator universe, 29th August. So for the 29th August, a few years ago, they released the new 4K cut of Terminator 2. Did I say Independence Day before? I don't know. I'm very tired. And we saw Terminator in the theaters, and I was born too young to watch it in the theaters when it came out, so that was fucking brilliant. I would love to see more older films come out in the theater. All of my shares just dinging at the moment. I'm not normally this popular. So that's something to keep an eye on, I suppose. But yeah, there's a lot of actors who are really struggling in self-isolation at the moment in their multi-million-dollar houses. I'm not bitter. You don't accuse me of being bitter. I'm not bitter. And then we've had events that are cancelled as well. Cannes has been cancelled, or more like cancelled. Tribeca, I believe, has been cancelled as well. More like Tribeca cancel. Maybe we should stop naming festivals after, things that can be so easily amalgamated with the word cancelled. I think that's probably what's going on. And then we've obviously seen South by Southwest close as well, which was initially a music festival, but last year it attracted over 400,000 people. It's a big opportunity for independent filmmakers to get their movies out there. And a lot of film crews, a lot of production outfits will save up all of their moolah. And South by Southwest will be the one thing they do. That'll be their push. That'll be their opportunity to go out there and market their movie. And yeah, we saw it cancelled a month ago. About that now. It's been so many years since the beginning of last month. So just an article from CNN Business. After seeing local businesses, including his own, take a hit, Luke Lashley, founder of film production company BLNS Films, decided to do something to help. This is talking about kind of how freelancers are trying to pick up after the fact. But the thing I want to key in on this article is that the total amount of reported income lost is $2.1 million. And these are the freelance workers or businesses that are operating behind the scenes for South by Southwest. And the cancellation means that they are out $2.1 million. But this is not including the tens of millions of dollars in cancellation costs that South by Southwest themselves are going to have to pay as a result of their insurance not covering communicable diseases. In fact, if you kind of look at the whole thing of South by Southwest, so not just the freelancers who work at South by Southwest or provide the catering or so on, but you also look at the companies that anticipate the increased footfall of South by Southwest coming in, big corporations renting stuff like venues, hotels, Airbnb rooms. It's an estimated $3.56 million last year. $356 million was the economic impact that South by Southwest happened on Austin, Texas last year, which is insane. That's such a big dent. At this point, people don't know if South by Southwest is going to survive the situation, if they're going to be able to pull through and actually keep running as a festival, which is, reasonably terrifying. And although this is no one's fault, COVID-19 is not it is people's it is people's fault, both its genesis and its spread. But it's not the average filmmaker's fault, or the average film goer's fault. But this is going to have a big impact on how films are made and how we do these things. Certainly at the moment, walking around Hull on my my rare exercise breaks, and it'd be pretty good to go out there with a camera and start filming stuff, because it's like the beginning of 28 Days Later out there, but you're not allowed out. A lot of people are being forced to take their creativity and kind of focus it at home. So let's talk about the future. Let's talk about what kind of the hope for the future. In terms of the filmmaking industry on the whole, we're seeing a lot of movies being released VOD early. Lee Wannell's The Invisible Person is one such film. And we're also seeing director watch parties, which is great. It's great that these filmmakers are saying, "Hey, let's sit down. I'll sit with you on Twitter. We'll watch through a movie together, and I'll ask questions and stuff." That's really cool. That's driving audience engagement in filmmaking. That's dope. Yeah, completely down with that. But the problem is that benefits the established filmmakers. That's benefiting the Lee Wannells and the David O. Sandbergs of the world. It's not doing much for new filmmakers. So what can new filmmakers do? if you're in the position where you're building up momentum to get your name out there, to get your work out there and start making stuff, or you've been making stuff for a while and you're going to feel the impact of not being able to make anything new or go out and network with other kind of creatives or whatever, then now is the time to be making stuff at home where you can. If you're an actor, just find soliloquies or speeches, or kind of write some stuff at home and just record yourself. If you are a writer, write. Goodness, now is the time to be writing. So what else are you going to be doing? If you are a DOP, or you're a camera person, or you're a director, just try setting up some lighting shots. Like, so just shoot some stuff around your house and play around with lighting, not just with any film gear that you happen to have on hand, but anything that you just have around the house. Experiment, find something you can do. Whether you stick it up on a portfolio or show or anything, just get doing stuff. There are more people paying attention to online entertainment now than before. And anecdotally speaking, I don't have any evidence for this, but anecdotally speaking, more people at home seem to be getting acclimated to streaming options. I'm aware of more people who normally don't interact with streaming content or platforms in a particularly engaging way. They just I've got Netflix on here, so I'll just watch Netflix, that's it. People are now more aware of the other options that are available to them. So if there is going to be some kind of creative-led response to this, and pushing some kind of increased engagement at an independent level with consumers directly, then now's the time to be doing it. And there are things that we kind of need. There needs to be, I think, some kind of better online marketplace for independent films online. But for now, just get creating stuff. Not to do an ad push or whatever you want, but this is one project that we're working on at the moment, which is hopefully going to be coming out very soon. The first episode of which is we're looking at a project that involves getting actors acting, and then we're putting together this big show, and we're going to have animators and sound technicians and all these bits and pieces, and we're all making our parts at home, and then they're going to be contributed into an assembly edit by myself. Like, there are opportunities to make stuff. You just have to figure out what your limitations are and work with it. One of the ways I like making movies personally, I like making any creative project, is to figure out a limitation and do it. I like working with a weird set of restrictions because I find that I tend to come up with the most creative output. This sucks, and what's happening sucks, and especially if you rely on these kind of creative work, or even commercial videography, for example. If you rely on your creative industry role as your actual job from whence you get money, then yes, this all sucks. But we also have a weird opportunity here. The film industry in the UK especially has been kind of crap for 10 years. And I feel like, although COVID-19 also sucks and it is also causing a lot of problems, it is an opportunity to stress test the industry. And it's kind of showing that there really aren't many outlets for independent filmmakers beyond what we can make for ourselves online. So if I'm going to try and find some kind of hope in this thing without just kind of telling you why everything's been bad for 10 years, then get out there and don't get out there. Stay in there. Stay in there. But make something. Just make something. I don't know what. You don't know what. But figure out what you can do, what would be difficult for you to do, and just find out what the space is between and go for it. And as always, if you're looking for any kind of editing or sound design or voiceover or any other bits and pieces, then you can always hit me up, BJC Video, on Twitter, or email firestonemedia@gmail.com. Always down to collaborate on whatever. I think this is a difficult time for a lot of people, and we kind of have to be there for each other. And this is a very good time to network and get to know the creatives who kind of work in the industries adjacent to you as well. That's kind of all I have today. It's not a long one. I don't have a lot to talk about necessarily. It's been a little stuff that's on my mind lately. I've been having conversations with people where they're concerns that this whole thing, COVID-19, or the coronavirus, is going to kill the film industry in the UK. And it's not. I don't think you're ever going to fully kill any filmmaking industry necessarily, because filmmaking is a very universally applicable response to the world that you're living in as an individual, but it's also very available to the consumer now. Like, camera equipment is not expensive. Most people can shoot a film on their phone with decent visuals and sound now. You're never going to get rid of filmmaking, but it's getting harder and harder to make money doing it. So I think COVID-19 is a good opportunity for people to find some new ways of doing what they've always been doing and shake things up a little bit. And then we'll see what happens once this all blows over, I guess. Anyway, that's all from me. Thank you very much for listening. This is going to be a probably fairly irregular podcast. I don't know when, but I'll tell you what, this has been a bit of a depressing episode. So next time we will talk about film. I don't know what film. We'll figure out something, but that's what we'll focus on. We'll find a film to talk about. It might be a recent film or a socially important film. Knowing me, probably not going to be either of those things, but we'll give it a go. Until next time, stay safe out there and go make stuff.